Our mission is to facilitate the integration of immigrants of Chinese descent via organizing community building events and partnering with local nonprofit organizations. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization and was founded in 2014. Since its inception, Wiz Chinese has been an active contributor and partner in our community. Our largest event is the Lunar New Year Fair held annually in Palo Alto. This year was our best year ever, where we raised over $38,000 for the Palo Alto Unified School District. On the other avenue, the Palo Alto Chinese Parent Club aims to build a strong community among the Chinese residents of Palo Alto by promoting good parenting, school involvement, and community integration. We offer both social and educational events like this today, and welcome anyone who is interested to become part of our community. The Palo Alto Chinese Parent Club was founded in 2014, has been operating under the Wiz Chinese organization. For more information about Wiz Chinese, the Palo Alto Chinese Parent Club, or to donate, please visit us on our website, wizchinese.org. So, logistically, I just wanted to go over a couple facts. This presentation will be conducted in English and will be about 45 minutes in length. We will target about 10 minutes for Q&A, questions and answers. So please save your questions until the end of the presentations. Questions can be submitted online in either English or Chinese. We will then ask our presenter to respond to them. So without any further ado, let me introduce our presenter, Eric Dunn of the Palo Alto Police Department. Eric, please take over.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Officer Dunn with the Palo Alto Police Department. I have been with the Palo Alto Police Department since 2020, right around everything when everything shut down for COVID. I got introduced to Wiz Chinese this year at the Lunar Festival at Mitchell Park, where Anne introduced herself and a couple weeks later asked me to partake in this event today. Since being in Palo Alto, I have been on several different teams in terms of specialties. Lately, I just got assigned to the field training officer team. So starting in June, I will be training the new police officers that are hired on and show them how to do things the Palo Alto Police Department way. I'm on the defensive tactics team where we train the officers every few years how to keep up to the peace officer standards of training in arrest control and defensive tactics. Um, what else? We have a bicycle team that we ride around Palo Alto, given if we have the amount of staffing certain days. So we try to ride around downtown, the mall, Cal Ave. But if staffing permits, we ride around all of town up to and including Baylands Park, down to San Antonio. Um, yeah, those are a few of the special teams I'm on. I also I'm on the crisis negotiation team. I don't know if you all saw in December we had a incident where SWAT and the crisis negotiation team were called out. Um, on Bryant Avenue, there was a public information posting back in December, January, and an online video of some of our body cameras, and as well as the crime scene investigation team, where if there's a big crime that occurs, we have the evidence team come out to collect evidence and go through the proper chain of custody. That way, in court, if there's any questions about who the evidence transferred to, everything is documented a certain way. So yeah, that's some of the background for me. Um, I wish I could live in Palo Alto, but unfortunately, I'm unable to afford living in Palo Alto. Before that, a little bit personally about myself is that this is my third career. I have worked both overseas in China and here in the United States in the LED lighting market industry as a product manager, engineer, and a technical service manager for about 10 to 15 years. Um, I am married. My wife is here next to me, and I have four children. My oldest is a boy. He is 13, and the younger three are girls, 11, 9, and 7. That's just a little bit about myself. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I have really not really too much prepared in terms of what to say next because I have a little bit of a family emergency today where I could was unable to prepare too much. So this is why I'm supposed to be working today in uniform in Palo Alto, but the family emergency made me take the day off. But I'm still here. I'm still able to support, but I don't have much documents with me available here with me now. Hold on a second. Okay. So, in regards to the city of Palo Alto, in terms of, so I'll start this off with some of the often seen crimes that we deal with in Palo Alto. Um, a lot of the residents' concern, first and foremost, is traffic. I'm sure a lot of you have young students that either commute via parents dropping them off at school, or they may walk or take a bicycle to school. Um, I often hear many concerns about some of the traffic issues that we have in our town. We used to have a traffic team staffed with one sergeant and 3 to 4 traffic officers, primarily just dealing with traffic complaints throughout the city, whether it be morning drop-off, afternoon pickups, or just people commuting to our town. Oftentimes people are in a rush, people come out late. There's a lot of traffic in the Bay Area, and not to mention that some of our city streets are very narrow, very compact. Specifically streets like Middlefield, Charleston, Meadow, and Embarcadero. Most of the posted speed limits on these streets are about 25 to 35. Um, however, uh, again, and all of these streets have more or less elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. Specifically during morning drop-offs and afternoon pickups, I'm sure you are all very familiar with how backed up, how packed, and how impacted these streets get. And you have people coming into the city that are trying to get to maybe the Stanford Hospital, maybe trying to get to the mall, trying to get to their jobs on Stanford campus. And so they're flying through these small city residential streets. Um, Problem is, we as the police department, we would love to be able to address these and be there every day if we can. But right now, we don't have a traffic team. That is a huge concern. We understand that a lot of residents are uh, have expressed desire to have our traffic team back. I am pleased to say that starting in June, we will have 2 traffic officers again on motorcycles, helping the residents, helping the community out with these traffic concerns. Um, However, because we are still very short-staffed, we are only able to staff it with 2 traffic officers and 1 sergeant. So on any given day, we'll probably have that sergeant and traffic officer working. They will work day shift hours, typically around the hours of 5 to 6 a.m. to about 4 to 5 p.m. Hopefully that addresses more of the concerns for morning pickup and drop off and afternoon pickup and drop off for our local schools. However, as I stated, we are still short staffed. So if there's any concerns about specific intersections, specific stop signs, specific traffic intersections, traffic lights, please let us know. I can send out the traffic sergeant's contact information down in the chat box later on during the Q&A so that you can reach out to our traffic sergeant to specifically state some of the areas of concern that you guys want us to address as the police department. So that's in regards to traffic. Like I said, I'm very happy that we are back to we are starting to staff back up that we can have 2 traffic officers. And Like I said, it's going to be one sergeant and one officer on every day for the most part. Um, and so there's going to be three traffic officers total. One of them's a sergeant and two of them's police officers. The sergeant is a supervisor of the team. And because we do have staffing shortage right now to backfill our patrol team, um, the traffic, the two traffic officers will work opposite sides of the week. So, just to give you a little bit insight about the Palo Alto Police Department, patrol typically works 4 days on, and then we have 4 days off. So, for example, today I'm supposed to be working Saturday, so today's my fourth day on. So tomorrow, Sunday, will be my first day off. It will be what I consider my weekend. So I would have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off. And then Thursday, I would come back to work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then that following week, I would have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off. So we work an 8 day work week rather than a 5 day work week with 2 day weekends. If there's any confusion or clarification, we'll save that for the Q&A. I can happily address that later. But the 4 days that I'm working is the A side. The 4 days that I'm off is the days that the B side works. So how this works right now for a foreseeable future is that one officer on the traffic team will work on the A side, patrol side, and then the second traffic officer will work on the B side, traffic side. And the sergeant will kind of bounce between both A side and B side to supervise both of them. Uh, our traffic officers, I'm sorry, our traffic sergeant is also managing and supervising our CSO, community service officers, who deal with traffic accidents, parking complaints, um, abandoned vehicles that are parking in front of your residences for over 72 hours that look like they don't belong there. Um, they will come out and put a 72-hour notice tag on those vehicles and come back in 2 to 3 days once that 72-hour time frame is met, and then we'll call a tow truck to come tow that vehicle from that in front of that residence. Um, So that's our traffic team. Again, I'll leave the traffic sergeant contact information in the chat box after this during the Q&A. Next, we have patrol. I am working patrol. We have 5 patrol teams on the A side and then 5 patrol teams on the B side. So 10 teams total. Um, but just to make it more simple for everybody here on this Zoom meeting, um, the basic simplest way to break it down is we have day shift, swing shift, and night shift. So day shift usually starts about 5 a.m. and ends at about 6 p.m. Our swing shift covers the gap between night shift and day shift. Our swing shift starts at 2 p.m. and goes to about 1 a.m. And then our night shift typically starts at 6 p.m. and goes to about 5 to 6 a.m. We have two sergeants, two supervisors working on day shifts, one sergeant supervisor working on swing shift, and two sergeants working night shifts as well. And this is both for the A side and the B side. Um, the uh, the whole patrol side, A side and B side, is managed by a A side watch commander lieutenant and a B side watch commander lieutenant. So both A side and the B side have their own separate lieutenants to give our lieutenants and our sergeants and me as a patrol officer adequate time off to be with our families to rest. Um, so on any given day in Palo Alto, on day shift, we often deal with in the morning, typically in the morning when everybody wakes up to go to work, you might find your vehicles broken into. You might find if you're coming back from vacation, you might find your home is broken into, or this and that. And then you call us as the police department. They'll send the patrol officer out to take that report. Um, and that's usually going to be me or somebody else on day shift. If it happens overnight, it'll be a night shift or swing shift officer. But some common crimes that we do see on patrol is vehicle break-ins. We have a lot of vehicle break-ins, specifically amongst our uh, public parking lots, like around downtown, around Cal Ave. We have a lot of those. Some places that frequently get hit up as well is going to be um, around El Camino Way and El Camino. There's that little Fuki Sushi and the Mama's Tofu House. That little area of parking lot often gets hit with vehicle burglaries as well. So, as a police officer, I would highly recommend you if you have anything in your vehicle, hide it. Take it out of the car, put it in your glove box, put it in your bag, take your bags out of your car. I would say don't even put anything in your trunk. Crooks know that, especially Teslas get hit a lot. That especially like Model 3s, Model Ys, but all Teslas so far, they can pop the rear window behind the rear passenger door, and from there they can push the chair down and look inside. If they see a bag, they can just pop the door open, grab it, grab the bag, and leave. If there's no bag, they break the window. They don't care. It's not their car. This whole process of breaking into any vehicle, not just a Tesla, from peeking into the car to breaking the car to grabbing the bag out of the car, takes less than 30 seconds. I would say probably on average, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. It happens very fast. Sometimes they don't really care if there's witnesses nearby, and they'll still do it anyway. So keep all belongings out of your vehicle. Anything that you might think of has value. As long as they see a bag in the car, a backpack, a briefcase, a luggage, even sometimes those uh, I forgot what they're called, but they're like tote bags. They'll still break the car and grab the bag. I've seen cars broken into for sunglasses, for an iPhone or a USB cable, for quarters, for a soda. All they took was a Sprite bottle that was already opened and drank. But these crooks will take anything and everything. Um, I see questions. I'll continue to go on and address the questions in the last 10, 15 minutes. So as patrol officers, those are some of the things that we respond out to. Um, I will note that as a patrol officer and the way our police department does handles quote unquote business is that we will try to send a patrol officer out to anybody who calls in. We'll try our best to contact everybody, whether it be in person, through email, or through a phone call. However, sometimes we are very busy, and if there's no actual uh, uh, video footage, if there's no dash cam footage, or if there's no suspect information, perpetrator information, oftentimes our dispatch will forward you to our online report system. That's very similar to how we take a report, and it's all approved. Every single online report is approved by our patrol supervisor sergeants. Um, but if there's no suspect information, no vehicle information, oftentimes our dispatch will notify you and give you the police department link to file an online report. Don't take that personally. Don't be upset. It's just sometimes due to staffing, we might not be able to make it out there. Um, as patrol officers, we often also deal a lot with financial crimes. A lot of our elderly community, regardless of ethnicity, gets scammed a lot through financial crimes. Another type of financial crime we see a lot on patrol is um, mail check fraud. So, say, for example, you mail a check out to your rental property or your landlord or something of that sort. Um, Crooks have intercepted and often intercept those mails, that those letters, and fraud their information on those checks. And I wish we could do more as a police department, but we're very short-staffed in that at this point, if it's not a high dollar amount, we cannot prioritize it as much as we would love to. We have one fraud detective right now, and he is extremely backed up with fraud cases from not just scams and check frauds, but also cryptocurrency frauds and credit card frauds as well. So be cognizant of that. I would say if you are mailing a check, specifically a check or a cashier's check or anything that has monetary value, try to go to the post office directly and drop it off in the mailbox rather than leave it out in front of your residence for the mailman to pick up. That would be my recommendation. Uh, Unfortunately, we do still have a lot of catalytic converter thefts occurring in Palo Alto. Early on, when I first started back in 2020, they did dispatch us as officers to go out and take that report. However, it's been so frequent, and oftentimes the crooks specifically target vehicles that are parked away from cameras. So oftentimes we won't have any footage at all. Um, So because of that, there's no suspect info. Our dispatch would unfortunately forward you to our online reporting system. However, I will say this, is that if you demand through our dispatch, you demand an officer come out to take your report, a patrol officer will and can still come out to take that report, but you might have to wait a little bit depending on how busy we are that day. They might push it off towards day shift is always busier than night shift. So if day shift is very busy, they might push it off towards night shift to have a night shift officer contact you, or we might push it off till the next day. Don't take that as we're not trying to service you. We would love to, but unfortunately, sometimes just due to the nature of being a police officer and law enforcement, we have to respond to certain higher priority calls. If somebody's like being robbed or somebody's being injured or if a life is threatened. So we will always try to prioritize in progress calls first. But yeah, we will try. If you demand a police officer to come out to take that report, we can and we still will at our best be there and meet with you in person to take that police report. Um, so that's a little bit about our patrol teams. Um, we have a detective team as well, and basically due to staffing shortages and 2020 COVID shutdown and all that, our detective team dwindled from 12 to five, six, sorry, six. So we have six detectives, including the sergeant supervisor detective, and they are all the ones that deal with after the initial patrol officer takes the police report from you, they are the ones that do the back end investigation, the follow up, the warrants, trying to find out who did it, in other words. We have as I said, we have one financial fraud detective. Um, we have one sexual and child abuse detective, and two property/burglary crime detectives, and one detective uh, crimes against persons. So it would be uh, assaults, batteries, robberies, um, and murders. Thankfully, we don't have those often at all in Palo Alto. And the five of them are supervised by our detective sergeant. So I don't know if you all saw, but I think 2 days ago, we have served an arrest warrant to a subject that lives off of Dana on the north end of Palo Alto for being a child predator. That was all put together by a tip from out of town that reached our sexual assault detective, and she worked diligently trying to put a case on him. And eventually we did, and we arrested him for high bail, and he is waiting on bail right now. But those are some of the things that our detectives do. They do drive around every now and then. You will see some of us in patrol working with the detectives in plain clothes, trying to do certain operations to keep the community safer. So that's mainly our main function as police officers in Palo Alto. We do have a lot of ancillary teams. As I mentioned, I am on the crime scene investigation team. I am on the crisis negotiation team, FTO team. But some of the main core teams that we have would be our SWAT team, and our crisis negotiation team, which is a SWAT team. I think everybody's fairly familiar with is our special weapons and tactics. We have 11, including the sergeant, we have 11 officers who are on SWAT. It's because we are a smaller department, unlike San Jose or Oakland or CHP or LAPD, we don't have a full-time SWAT team. So what that means is at LAPD, if an officer or a sergeant is on the SWAT team, that's all he does every day full time is a SWAT officer. They go out and do SWAT raids and SWAT checks. Uh, Typically, when SWAT is called out, it has to do with some very violent crime that police have to deal with. As police officers, we like to make the joke that if police officers have to call police, who do they call? They call SWAT. So that, in essence, is what our SWAT yeah, does. But since we are a smaller department, our uh, our SWAT team is 11 officers and one sergeant, and it's made up of a mixture of just all of us in the police department. We have a few detectives that are on SWAT, and we have mainly consists of patrol officers on SWAT. And then SWAT works hand in hand with our crisis negotiation team because these days, with the way law enforcement is going, the trajectory it's going, the way our state works, is that the public, the courts, the district attorneys, the defense attorneys, they want to see we've utilized every single method, every single avenue available to us as police officers to safely end the situation. They don't want SWAT to necessarily open fire their firearms at a subject if we can try to de-escalate, talk them down, uh, bring the tensions down. And in essence, that's what crisis negotiation team does. So if we get called out to a very violent subject, he has a very in-depth criminal history background. SWAT was set up on the house, surround the house. They would come up with different tactics to breach into the home if necessary. But that is always the last resort. And it is on the crisis negotiation team to make contact with the subject and talk to him for a peaceful resolution, for him to come out with his hands up, so that we can arrest him, or we can provide him with the help that he needs, or we can provide him with mental treatment or hospitalization if needed. And so, in essence, that's what crisis negotiation team does. But every time SWAT gets called out, we have crisis negotiation team there and present and helping out SWAT hand in hand. Um, and finally, lastly, we have implemented special problems team, special enforcement team, starting from June last year. We have two officers specifically assigned to special problems that the city might encounter. I understand a lot of our residents, our community is very frustrated with some of the trash, some of the transients uh, going on in town. And unfortunately, with the way the Ninth Circuit Court has been operating, is there's not really much that we as police officers can do in terms of if a homeless person is homeless, that's not a crime, and we will do our best to provide them with resources, with housing, with food, with different food and shelter options that are available out there. But sometimes some of these individuals have very violent and criminal backgrounds. And that's when our special problems team, our special enforcement team comes into play, is that they have a little bit different training, they have a little bit different expertise in dealing with these subjects. They usually work about 10 a.m. to about 8 to 9 p.m. More so when the city is busy, when people come into town, when everybody's awake, when things are very observable from a public perception standpoint, this is when these two officers work to work best with our community to address community concerns. And that's not just with some of the trash and some of the homeless problems that's been going on the south end of town, closer to Meadow. There's more and more, and even south of Meadow on transport, there's more and more transients. There's more and more unhoused people. There's more and more RVs parked along there. And so what they would do is they would go help out our CSOs in tagging the vehicles. I'll be honest, a little bit, maybe too bluntly honest, that sometimes these people understand the nuances of how we work. So they'll play merry-go-round, or not merry, I forgot, the game where you just move this chair out, and then you take a chair out, and somebody else loses a seat. But they'll just ring around their RVs. So they'll move it down a block and park it for 3 days until somebody complains, and then they'll move it down a block and park it for 3 days until somebody complains. And they'll just keep doing that because they know that outside of that, there's not much legal authority that we can enforce as the city wants, and as you residents want, the police officers. We really, realistically, there's nothing we can do. It's a public street. It's a public spot for them to be there. Because it's public, they have every legal right to be there. They have every legal right to park their cars there. The city and the state does have a 72-hour parking enforcement law. However, like I said, these individuals know that, and then they just keep moving their vehicles around so that they know, as police officers, there's not much we can do. So that's when our special enforcement team comes into becomes very helpful, because we start contacting these subjects. And oftentimes, like I said, sometimes they have very criminal history backgrounds. Not all the time, but every now and then they do. And that gives us a little bit more legal authority to provide resources to them, to provide options to them, to not always have to park here in front of our businesses, our residences, our schools, if you will. So that's in essence what our special enforcement team does and handles. And unfortunately, I wish it was a 2 to 3 year assignment, but for now it's a 1 year by 1 year assignment. So every year we have two new officers in that position. I'm very happy that we do have two very good officers who will start uh, that position in June. Right now, we have two officers there who are finishing their assignment that conclude in June. So one thing about our police department is that year, our shift year, our patrol year, our assignment year, our fiscal year starts and ends in June. So it's April right now. In about 2 months, our shift, our fiscal, our year basically ends. And then starting in mid-June is when our new year starts. So that's when our new fiscal budget starts. That's when our new patrol team starts. That's when our detectives, if we have any new detectives uh, being swapped into the detective position, that's when that would start. So uh, at this point of year, this is when we all bid for our new shifts, our new assignments, our new specialties. We had just did that this past week. And so I'm very happy to say that we have two very experienced, two very good officers to be assigned to the special enforcement team, special problems team. Any issues that is a little bit outside of the patrol purview, they would happily help out the residents and the city, the businesses of Palo Alto. Same as the traffic team, as I mentioned earlier, we don't right now have a traffic team. They will be starting in June once the new patrol year, once the new fiscal year starts for the police department. They will be on motorcycles. However, sometimes motorcycles is not going to be very optimal for traffic enforcement in all situations. So we do have a traffic vehicle as well that they can be in, and they can choose to switch between the motorcycle or the traffic traffic vehicle. Um, Yeah, so that's a little bit of a nutshell of our police department. We have a very good communications department. They are staffed also 24 hours a day. If there's any concerns you have in terms of crime or safety, our dispatch and our officers do work 24 hours a day around the clock. So if you have something of an emergency, whether it be medical or criminal, or you just don't feel safe at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, give us a call. We'll dispatch an officer out there to help you and see if there's any crime or any of that sort. Um, Let me think. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of our police department. Um, I think I can open up to basic Q&A right now, if that's okay with everybody else.
Sure. So, um, why don't I just, we have a list of questions already. Should I just read some and then have you just answer those?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So let's just start up. Um, Basic question. How many police officers are there in the Palo Alto Police Department?
It's always a moving target. We are authorized, though, for I believe 88 officers right now. The city has funded 88 police officers, and that includes the chief, the assistant chief, the captains, lieutenants, sergeants, and agents and officers. 88, but we don't have 88 right now. Ideally, in a perfect world, in a perfectly staffed department, we should have 50 on patrol. 50 on patrol, 25 on the A side, 25 on the B side, uh, excluding the lieutenants. And then in the perfectly staffed world, we would have and should have 12 in our detectives bureau. In a perfectly staffed police department, we should have 3 to 4 traffic officers and 2 on the special enforcement team. And if we had the staffing, we would also send a handful of officers to county task force too. Criminals don't have jurisdiction; they don't have city boundaries the way we as police officers do. Um, so oftentimes criminals go from city to city to city to city, county to county to county to county. And as police officers, we have to work together within the county and within the state and even outside of the state to try to do our investigation, try to track these criminals down and apprehend them or write a case on them or request warrants for them. So in a perfect world, in a perfectly staffed department, we should have 88. At this point right now, I want to say we probably have about 65 to 69 officers, including our chiefs, assistant chiefs, captains, and lieutenants. Um, One thing that I think is very important to note is that patrol is always the backbone of any and all and our police department. At any point you call 911 and ask for a police officer, that's going to be patrol. So patrol will always, always, always be staffed. And it's when we can't and it's when we start having to lose staffing that we start pulling from the traffic team to backfill patrol. It's when we start pulling from the detectives to backfill patrol, or the special enforcement team to backfill patrol. But I'm very pleased with the way our department's been going in and the trajectory it will continue to go in the next year, 2, 3 years. We are working very hard to restaff with the police department, especially after all the COVID shutdowns and the COVID hiring freezes. We do have, I think, 9 police trainees in the program right now that will, at any given point, a few are going to be done with training and be serving you, residents, and the community in Palo Alto very soon within the next 2 weeks. Some of them had just started the academy a month ago, so they're a little bit ways away before they're able to serve you as the community and residents of Palo Alto. But I'm very pleased that we are working back to have staffing. It is a good sign that we are able to staff 2 special enforcement officers and 2 traffic officers And I just remembered that we do also have a psychiatric response officer as well, where he is paired with a clinician for his entire shifts. And we should be staffing for two of those as well. But right now we have one.
Okay. Could I just ask a quick follow-up question for the staffing of police officers? Do
Of
you,
course.
so from a coverage perspective, are police officers when they're, uh, is it citywide or do you divide out by north and south lines between like Oregon Expressway and Page Mill, or is it just all centered around Crescent Park?
David, that's a very, very excellent question. That's a very good question. On day shifts and day shift, we typically have about 8 to 9 officers working. Night shift, we have anywhere from 5 to 8 officers working. And the sergeants and supervisors typically, depending on staffing, try to spread it out. So one officer is in charge of this area. So Palo Alto has four what we call beats, zones, areas. Um, we have 4 beats, and we typically have one officer per beat, and then 2 officers or 3 officers that are rover units that respond all over the city. Now, lately we've been dividing it north and south and rover. So we have 2 units on the north end, specifically assigned to the north side, north of Oregon, and then two officers specifically for the south beat, south of Oregon. And then the rover unit is we have 2 rover units that kind of just go around responding to calls as needed. But just because an officer is assigned to a south beat or south of the city does not mean they cannot and will not respond to the north. It's just that if there's any report responsibility or calls for service, it is that officer's primary job that day to respond to anything south of Oregon.
Okay. All right. I think that was that question. We have some other questions. It's around property. Any tips to prevent car break-ins? And I think you already
That's a good
talked a little bit
question.
during your presentation, but if you can elaborate some more about, is it the vehicle they're in, or is it just people you're interacting with? What would you recommend?
That's a good question. I'll split this up in a two-part response. Number one is if you're out and about in the city, and number two would be is if you're just parking in front of your own residence or on your driveway. So the first part is if you're driving about in the city, um, in regards to getting your vehicle broken into, I don't want to say I'm not too concerned about your vehicle getting broken into when you're out and about in the city. Like, let's say you live on South Court and then you want to drive to Cal Ave for lunch or dinner or something. I'm not going to say your car's not going to get broken into, but typically, uh, they look for vehicles that they can easily identify as out of town or a rental car. So that's that. But regardless, to answer the question is I would say keep your vehicle as clean as possible, as empty as possible, um, and with basically nothing inside. Unfortunately, that's the way the trajectory is towards California as law enforcement. Um, I would say keep your vehicle as clean as possible when you go out. Now, then I don't want to recommend this, but from my own experience as a police officer, vehicles that are extremely messy get ignored as well. Vehicles that are extremely messy get ignored as well, and vehicles that have a lot of children's stuff like car seats, bibs, children's toys, those kind of get ignored as well. But like I said, for the most part, these crooks specifically try to target vehicles that they can easily identify as out of town or a rental vehicle. In terms of what type of vehicle, no, there's no like, hey, we only want to hit Teslas or we only want to hit Hondas or we only want to attack Lexuses or so on and so forth. Any vehicle, but at the same time, I want to keep note this is that um, you can do all the precautions that you can to keep your car from getting broken into, but sometimes there's no rhyme or reason as to why crooks pick a certain car. And unfortunately, that might just be your car, even if it's clean, even if there's nothing in there. In regards to when you're parking out in front of your residence, I would say try also to keep your car as clean as possible. I know that as a police officer, when I pull you over or when I pull a vehicle over, I say, hey, let me see your license, registration, and proof of insurance. But these days, everything's digital. I would highly, highly recommend you to keep any documents with your personal information out of your vehicle. Any documents, any credit cards, any social security, any bank accounts out of your vehicle. Whether that be in your glove box as well, or in the center console, or in the trunk, or underneath your car, your driver's seat or passenger seat, or in the pocket behind. Do your best to keep anything that has personal identifiable information out of the vehicle. Um, Another thing I would recommend as well is get a always recording dash camera on the front of your vehicle and the rear of your vehicle if possible. Um, Sometimes they're in residential neighborhoods, they're walking up and down the streets. They're not driving. So if you have a dash cam that faces the front of your vehicle, if he's walking from behind your car, after he hits your car, he's going to walk away in front. And based upon what I said earlier, is if there's no perpetrator or suspect information, if there's no vehicle, uh, typically our dispatch will tell you to file an online report. But now, if you have a dash cam and you go back and review your dash cam and say, oh, I saw this guy walking away from my car. And then I see on the next car, he's peeking into the vehicles. Well, then, as a patrol officer and dispatch will tell you, we'll send an officer out, and then I will come out as a patrol officer to take that police report. And then that dash camera footage would then get forwarded over to our detectives department. So it's highly important to have some sort of camera as well in your vehicle. Another thing I would recommend is if it's possible, get some cameras on your property that face your driveway slash the road as well. One thing that I find very peculiar about the city of Palo Alto is that not a lot of residents have cameras on the exterior of their homes or interior of their homes. Um, Having camera footage helps us out significantly. Um, it really does. Sometimes we see these footages on like YouTube or TikTok or Instagram where these people are completely covered up. Their hoodies are over their heads. They have face masks on. They're wearing gloves. But they have the way police have standard operating procedures. Crooks also have their specific MOs in doing their crimes. So if it's captured on camera and we investigate it, we can start working with other departments. We can start pulling different resources to identify who this is. So I would highly recommend cameras as well.
Okay. So in the same vein, I mean, you talked a little bit about car break-ins, and you talked about security cameras and other things. How about preventing home break-ins? In the same vein, we talked about cars, but how about homes? And if you could elaborate.
Yeah, homes are very difficult. I would say for homes, a little bit background about Resbergs, as police we call them Resbergs. Um, Typically, they actually do not happen overnight, as most common sense would tell us they happen overnight. Resbergs either happen earlier in the morning or early in the evening. Um, I would I would say typically around 7 to 11 p.m. 11 p.m. would kind of be the later side. And then in the morning, probably around 4 a.m. to about 6 or 7 a.m. is based upon my experience. Now, I haven't checked the statistics and the data and the police reports and all the data behind that. But as a patrol officer, every time I go out to these types of calls, it typically happens between those time frames. Um, so, in regards to what you can do to prevent uh, Resbergs, number one is make it very obvious that somebody's home. A lot of Resbergs happen because these people, these crooks, these suspects believe nobody's home. Um, they're not trying to break into a house to have a confrontation. They're trying to break into a house to get your jewelry, to get your cash. to get whatever it is inside your house. So they to get whatever they want inside your house as easy and quickly as possible. And if somebody's home, somebody can see them and provide us as the police with their description. They want the easiest target as possible. So oftentimes we'll see is these crooks think nobody's home, so they'll go in from the back of the house, break the window, rummage through the house where they think stuff is hidden, and then within 2 minutes run out and leave. Usually, not always, but usually through the front door. So if it's an alarm, for example, as soon as the rear window is broken, the alarm would go off. Um, it takes about a minute or two for the alarm company to realize and call us as the police. And once the police are notified, it takes another 1 to 2 to 5 minutes for us to get dispatched. Once we're dispatched, it's going to take another 2 to 5 minutes for us to get to your residence. By then, it's already 15 minutes old. So,
Mhm.
what I would recommend is keep that alarm, but have active live interior cameras as well. Something I keep for my own residence is when I go out of town or when I'm away at night, my cameras are not, yeah, when I'm out of my house at night, if I'm traveling, if I'm out and I know I won't be back for a few hours, my cameras are always on and rolling. And as a police officer, I know that if the alarm goes off, but and the alarm company notifies me, by the time they notify me, it's already slower than when the camera notification has popped off on my phone and I've already observed what's happening. So I would be able to call the police department in the city I live in much faster than the alarm company could notify me and then notify the police department. And for us as the police department, if we get a Resberg in progress, and if we get a Resberg in progress and the resident is telling us, I'm watching the people rummage through my house right now, we we will get down there as quickly and safely as possible to apprehend these people. Unfortunately, like I said, most of these Resbergs that we get hit don't have interior cameras. So I would say number one, try to keep it, make your residence appear as occupied as possible. Turn on the front lights, turn on the lights that face the front of the house. Um, Keep cars in your driveway. If you don't drive a car often, if you have a car that sits on your driveway for months at a time, I would say move it to the other side of the driveway every week or two. Um, if you have a car that sits on the driveway and a car that sits on, just keep mixing it up so that it looks like somebody is home every so often, so that if people are casing and driving around your neighborhood, they will see, oh, this car's been moved. Okay, let's not go to this house. That would be another one of my recommendations. Um, if you're sleeping at night, especially for some of our elderly community, they might sleep a little bit earlier, like at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Again, keep your lights on. Make people think you are at home. Um, that is one of the best deterrents because again, crooks don't want confrontation. Crooks want an easy target where they can run into the house, grab the stuff that they need, and run out through the front door. Um, Notify your neighbors, right? If you're gonna be out of town, have your neighbors check on you. Don't leave your trash bins outside your house for a week, 2 weeks. That's a clear telltale sign, even for me as a police officer. Oh, dude, I've driven around this neighborhood 3 times this week. The trash bins are still out. That tells me you've been out of town as a police officer. Then that tells the crooks as well that you're out of town. Another thing is if you have an exterior mailbox, um, try to have a neighbor come by if you're on vacation to clean out your mail. Because if your mailbox is getting overstuffed, that to me as a police officer, okay, they're out of town, or they don't live here, or they're somewhere else. Everything that I see as a police officer, the crooks see it too. So do everything you can to make it seem like you are at home. Let your neighbors know. Have your neighbors check in on your house. Um, that would be some of the easiest, simplest ways. And finally, like I said, to get a camera that actively turns on when you're not at home. Because as a police officer, like I said, if you can tell our dispatch and tell me as a cop that somebody is actively in your house right now and you see them on camera, we will get there in a heartbeat.
Okay, thank you. So, as a follow-up question around break-ins in the homes and cars, which beats have the most break-ins? Is it north of Oregon? Is it south of Oregon? Or is it more closer to we in the news, like in Palo Alto Daily and Palo Alto Online? We always see active events in Stanford Mall. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. And as if I was a resident, I would be very curious as well. Unfortunately, based upon the stats and the crime stats that our department sends out to us officers every week and every month, unfortunately, there's no rhyme or reason as to which area gets hit more than others. I would say sometimes in a given week, maybe it would be um, around Duvnik that gets hit more than another week. Uh, and then the next week, it might be the neighborhood around Barron that gets hit more. And then the third week, it could be around Ohlone, right? So it really, there's no rhyme or reason. It's kind of up to the humanness of the crook doing the crime. Some nights, uh, some nights we get calls up and down a certain area. So um, there's kind of a clear indication as the way they might have traveled, but that's not always the case. So I would say, regardless of where you live in Palo Alto, regardless of where you work in Palo Alto, try to keep it as safe as possible and to your best common sense. Try to not be a victim of crime. Don't think like, oh, this is Palo Alto, this is safe. And for the most part, I will acknowledge Palo Alto is very safe, but don't set yourself up to be an easier target than you should be.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. And then in regards to active stuff, for the most part, because um, downtown and Stanford Shopping Center and Cal Ave are kind of more of our high trafficked areas. Those, for the most part, are the places that we do get the most active in progress stuff. Um, Stanford Mall is a very nice, very affluent mall with very high end shops. So based upon just that, we do get certain types of crimes at that mall that other cities don't necessarily see. Um, I know Milpitas has the Great Mall. They do get some of the same crimes that we get at Stanford Mall as well. But just because we have like, what do you call it? LV, we have Tiffany, we have Chanel, we have Burberry, and we have two very well staffed and very well stocked Apple stores in our city. Those are some of the hot areas that crooks like to go to. And we do have two Sephoras as well. Sephora gets hit a lot as well. So unfortunately, if we could, we would love to uh, patrol as much as Palo Alto as we could, but just based upon a probability and statistics, the more inactive, in progress stuff typically happens around these areas. So we do try to patrol as much as Palo Alto as we can, but sometimes there might be one or two more officers in these areas than, for example, around Meadow and Middlefield.
Okay. And here's the last written question. Um, does Palo Alto Police Department have a neighborhood watch program?
At this point, I do not believe we do. Um, we have we used to have one, and we used to have a explorers program. But based upon staffing and shortages and funding, we do not have a neighborhood watch program right now. We do not have a police explorers league right now. For those that don't know, the police explorer league is when a student in middle school and high school uh, comes to the police department and trains in our tactics, trains in becoming a police officer, in essence, if you will, at a young age. For those that are interested in a career in law enforcement as well. Um, However, I do want to note that our city and the police department has, I think, about two. or so months ago, put out a public information bulletin stating that if you do have cameras and you want to be part of the police department program, there is a way to notify and not activate, register your residence as a residence with cameras. In the event that, I don't know if some of you have heard or not, I think it was 2 years ago, somebody uh, was shot in the leg on South Court towards closer to Fletcher or JLS, sorry. Um, and At that point, I had to go up and down the street on South Court, every house looking for cameras. So this program helps us identify quickly which houses in a vicinity of a crime that had occurred has cameras. So this would help us out as a police department. This would help keep the community safer. And a lot of people think it's like a Big Brother program, but it's not. We don't have access to your cameras. We can't view your cameras unless you give us that footage. But I would highly recommend it. It would help us solve crimes as well if you do have cameras to register your residence and your contact info on this link. And if you guys need, I can send that link out to Anne, and she can send that out to Wiz Chinese.
Okay, sounds good. We did get another question from the group. Bike theft at the Palo Alto Unified School Districts, at the secondary schools, middle and the high schools. Any comments about what happens there? I mean, it's there's a prevalence of theft.
Yeah.
So, what is the police department doing? Because there are requirements to have bikes registered. So, what can the Palo Alto Police Department do about that, about theft?
Yeah, that's a very good question in terms of, the transportation our kids need to get to and from school. Um, I will first and foremost say this is that not everybody registers their bikes with our city. So if a bike eventually is stolen, having it registered with the city helps us with the serial number and quickly identifying that the bike was stolen in the event that we are able to track it down. Oftentimes, we get reports that, hey, my bike was stolen at JLS, at Fletcher, at Green Middle, or even at an elementary school. Less so at elementary school, but yes, even at elementary school. And let's say hypothetically we can locate the bike, but more often than not, students don't have any attachments to the bike to make it quickly and clearly identifiable for us as the police that it's their bike. Oftentimes, people don't register with the city so that we can't verify the serial number belongs to them. And then once the bike is purchased from the shop, many people who purchase the bike don't keep a record of that serial number as well. So even if we are able to locate the bike, I I as a police officer need to have proof that it's your bike before I can confiscate it and return it back to you. In other words, if you tell me that's your bike and it in fact is not, and I take it from the other person and give it to you, then in essence, I, as a police officer, am committing theft and I am breaking the law. So I don't want to do that. And that's why I would need something that quickly and easily identifies your bike as yours. Some kids put stickers on their bikes, some kids put decals on their bikes. That helps as well. So one of the first things I would recommend is yes, register your bike with the city. If you don't, at the very least, keep a record of the serial number of the bike. Take a photograph of the bike with certain attachments on it. Not all bikes come with kickstands. Not all bikes come with water bottle holders. By getting a bike with a water bottle holder at a specific color or at a specific angle, that's something that I can quickly and easily identify that as your bike and take a picture of the bike. So if you show me the picture of you with the bike or the bike at your house, I know for a fact that that's your bike. In regards to the thefts on school property, it's a very frustrating, event that does occur more than we wish occurs. And it's a very difficult process for us because we want to do as much as we can to help the community and support the community and keep our kids safe, keep our kids moving and transporting to school. But oftentimes during school hours, our presence is not really welcomed on school property. So we try to stay off to respect the school district's requests. That said, sometimes and oftentimes people don't report their bike thefts to us anymore. So if something is unreported to us, we don't know that it happens. For same thing with the traffic intersections. Like if as residents, as a community, if this intersection has everybody flying through a stop sign, we don't have enough officers to sit at every single stop sign to know exactly what the community is struggling with. So we need the community's help to address these by notifying us as a police department that this is in fact happening. And we will do our best when notified to address those concerns for as long as we can. Same as the bike thefts. If these bike thefts go unreported, I don't know that your bike is being stolen, and I don't know that it's happening every single day. So our staffing will not send officers to help patrol those areas that are commonly uh, getting hit with theft. And in essence, that is also
Oop. Uh, Eric, it seems. Are you there, Eric? Uh-oh.
Yeah, looks like there's a technical issue. Um,
Oh,
let's
we just.
give
Yeah.
him maybe a minute, see if he can come back online.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting, hopefully Eric can come back. Are there any additional questions from anybody else in the organization or group that would like to ask any more questions? Uh-oh. Okay.
Sorry, my computer just died. I'm using my phone now. I apologize. Um, sorry, as I was saying, if we don't know about it, we don't know we need to address it. So I would recommend as a community, if you have your children's bikes being stolen, let us know. File a report, ask for an officer to come by and do more patrol checks there. Oftentimes, more often than not, I would say as police officers, we call it flying the flag. Is basically we just drive around and patrol an area. That oftentimes prevents crimes in and of itself by having police presence there. So if Gunn and Pally do often have their children report their thefts to us, but it's been a while. I will be honest, I have not seen a call for service for a bike theft in quite some time, either at any of the middle schools in town, at JLS, at Fletcher, and at Green, let alone at an elementary school. Um, so if we don't know that it's actually happening, we can't address it. That's that's the best I can say. But one thing about I think Pally is that they do have cameras at their bike lock area. I don't think Gun does. So any bike theft at Pally, the school works pretty well in providing us that footage if we do need to do follow up on that.
Okay. I think we've gone through all of our questions from the group. I didn't. Should I just looking at time, we are about 15 minutes over. So I just want to be respectful of Eric's time. So Eric, do you want to open anything else, or do you have time for anything else? But I think we covered all the questions.
Yeah. I can stick around for maybe 5 more minutes in case there's any last minute questions in regards to, some crimes or some more info about the police department, if anybody does. If not, then yeah, either way.
Okay. So if anybody has any more questions, please submit it, and Wendy can actually type it up, and then I can present it. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending this forum.
Yeah, thank you so much.